Malcolm in the Middle is a story about a young boy who was murdered too soon by none other than his family. So we start with a shot of the world. It's as though it's shouting at us. This show is set on Earth. Whether or not everything we see is real is debatable. All that we know is the setting. So Malcolm shows us his busy room. He shares with two of his brothers. I've heard of people sharing a room with one sibling, but two others, it seems a bit much, especially for such a small room in a house that definitely has more rooms than that. And of course his brother Francis is away at army camp. Why can't one of them sleep in that room? Odd. Now one of the first things that becomes apparent is that we are invading this family's privacy. Bryan Cranston is naked in the kitchen. His mum is later naked doing the laundry. We, the audience, are not meant to be seeing this. We're not meant to be present in this room. They believe that everything is private. So Malcolm looks and talks directly into the camera. It's mostly to complain rather than explain things to us or express a sudden emotion like confusion or anger. Why Malcolm? Out of all family members, why is he the only one gifted with this power to look us directly into the eye? The show wants us to know that this is all about him. He's in the middle of all this. Now I notice that the neighbours either side of Malcolm's house both have for sale signs in the garden. They're trying to get rid of this property. One neighbour I'd understand, but two, it's almost as though something happened in Malcolm's house that has caused the property to not be desirable anymore. Perhaps a murder? Also notice how out of the house on the right of them come two twin girls, mixing up my words there, and they're dressed very similarly to the girls out of The Shining. So already we're getting a horror aspect. We also get some horror imagery later on when Malcolm sits down and finds his entire backside covered in red, blood red. It's meant to be violent and vivid. We're being told something ever so subtly, and they try and distract us with this plot of a young boy just talking about his day-to-day life. There's a murder being concealed here, and we're going to solve it. So let's say, for sake of argument, that this story is really about Malcolm's murder and his family living on without him. Who could the suspect be? Well, his older brother Francis has been sent away. Perhaps he killed Malcolm and has been punished by his parents but not the authorities. They've hidden it. They've already lost one child. Why would they want to lose two? Dewey is also a suspect. He violently waves about that cricket bat and something is clearly disturbed about him. So we see an exchange with a typical bully. Dewey is insisting that Malcolm hold his hand, but he's alone. It's almost as though Dewey is the only one who can hear him in this moment, and he's saying, "Why did I have to kill you? I didn't mean to. Hold on to me. Don't leave." For of course, like real life, murder is permanent. Malcolm's advice to Dewey is that if he's approached by the bully, drop to the ground and cuddle up into a ball. If he's attacked, then he has to remain in the ball. He has to defend himself, perhaps like Malcolm couldn't when he was attacked. So there's a moment in class where they're painting fruit. Of course the teacher has had to buy a fruit herself. She's had to purchase something perishable because the school isn't willing to. So the teacher has to take that upon herself. It's almost as though it's a metaphor for how the school isn't willing to look too far into Malcolm's death. Perhaps it's been written off as an accident. But of course we all know what happens when someone dies. We romanticise them. We say, oh, he was a nice person, weren't they? When in actuality they could have been terrible. No one stands at a funeral going, oh, thank God they're gone. We always feel a bit remorseful. So instead of Malcolm going into school and being promoted to a special class like he is in this episode, perhaps it's the school memorialising him. Perhaps naming a classroom after him. And he feels like he's stuck there and he's being made a mockery out of. He can paint the fruit so well because he too is perishable. So let's get on to one other suspect who could have killed Hal. There's a scene where Malcolm is shown a series of photographs by his teacher. One of them is a car interior, which Malcolm identifies as showing a car going on the wrong side of the road alongside a list of other issues that could lead to accident. Now Dewey couldn't drive, but Hal could. Could he have got into a crash and accidentally killed Malcolm? Or is it possible that there's someone else in the show that we already know has got in trouble for driving a car and getting into an accident before? His brother Francis. Could this have been the car that Malcolm died in? And he's seeing on this paper his death. One of the other people who interact with Malcolm is a boy in a wheelchair, and when he goes round to visit him in his house, he finds a comic. The comic's title is Young Blood, which is exactly what spilled from Malcolm when he died. So who could have killed Malcolm? The possible suspects we have are Hal, solely because it's possible he could have been driving the car that killed Malcolm. Francis, who we know was in a car accident. Dewey, who we know can be quite violent. But what is a trait that seems to match a lot of killers? I did a podcast back in the day with the wonderful Emma. Shout out to her for watching this. And one thing I learned is that killers tend to be quite fond of hurting and killing small defenseless animals. Who in the show kills small defenseless animals? Francis says himself that he does it during boot camp. So I am leaning towards Francis being the killer, despite Dewey and his quickness with that cricket bat when it came to attacking Malcolm. Someone in the school visits Malcolm's home. She looks through the window and sees the brothers attacking each other but writes it off. Doesn't comment on it. She ignores it. No one is actually seeing what we're seeing, or at least it's showing us that this world that it showed us in the start isn't like our own. People don't care as much. Also, notice how Malcolm has white bed sheets. It's a bit unusual to have white bed sheets outside of a hospital room, especially for a child. His brothers don't have perfectly white bed sheets. Could that be reminding the parents? Could that be because the last bed he saw was a hospital bed before he passed? When Malcolm is put into the special class, they treat him like he's in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, an asylum. No one joins him for lunch, but everyone stares at him. Is it possible that this was the table he ate lunch at, where he no longer does for obvious reasons? He's dead. He puts it down to being smart, but does he know that he's not alive anymore? That he's just coming up with metaphors and excuses for what seems to be the impossible? And the end of the episode shows us him approaching the bully and talking back to him. Something so out of character for the kid. This isn't real, is it? This is all a fantasy in Malcolm's head. Malcolm was murdered, either by violence or an accident. And I think the more we watch of these episodes, we will come just a little bit closer to figuring out who his killer is and why the ghost of Malcolm is telling us this story. If you want to join us to solve this mystery, then let me know what you think of it in the comments below, and of course subscribe. And a new video will be up soon where we'll delve deeper. We'll take a look into episode 2 and see if there's any more clues hidden there. What do you think? Is Malcolm dead? And if so, who do you believe is the true killer? I've been Mark, and we're going to get to the centre of all of this. Or you could say, we're going to get to the middle of it. Bye.
Oh yeah, this guy has not enough to say, too much to say. Edie's plate is red, it's barometer of all that's good. He knows what we gotta do on the daily regular, yeah he should.
Spicy likey.